Okay, so I think I am live. This is the first time my computer has allowed me to start one of these, so I'm pretty happy about that. Kevin should be joining me very shortly, Title Dragon. He's had an eventful weekend. I think he was hosting a mock trial or something along those lines, some fun stuff, and he's had a busy weekend, so whoa, hold on, there we go. Let me pause that. Okay. So when he pops on, I will invite him in here and he can join us. But welcome to Fic Night number 5. I'm outside because my husband's inside doing some cleaning. So this is the safest place to be right now. If it gets a little bit dark, though, I might have to change locations. But for now, we're good. It's a beautiful night. And we will be reading, or I will be reading, I guess, a story called Put a Ring on It by Alexis Black, or A Black, as her name is listed on HPFF. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into reading. Just a small disclaimer, this is a mature story, so you can decide whether or not you want to stick around and listen with us. It's very funny, so if you're willing, you'll definitely have a good time. I keep saying we, I'm going to read it, and then we'll have a discussion. Feel free to pop in the comments. Alexis Black does not have a YouTube account, so she's not able to chat her questions or her answers to us, but we did send her some questions in advance, and she has graciously answered those for me, so I will be able to read the questions that I've been sent this past week and read her answers as well, so she can participate that way. So I am going to go ahead and jump right into reading, and I'll be looking out for Kevin as well when he pops on, so I can join, or I can invite him. But here we go. This is Put a Ring on It by Alexis Black. Sirius stumbled into the first available train compartment and lowered himself gingerly with a wince. That it was already occupied by a pair of lovely Ravenclaws with whom he had been flirting with nonstop prior to Christmas break was unimportant. He hardly took note of them as his trousers pulled tight in the most painful way once he was seated. "Oi, Black, you all right there?" Florence asked. "You look a bit peaky." Beads of sweat were forming on Sirius's pale brow. "It'll make it so much better next time," she'd said, insatiable bird. He blamed Lizzie. He blamed Lily for his misery. It was only at her suggestion that he'd ended up in that Muggle pub in the first place. "I'm fine," he muttered through clenched teeth, which had Florence and Gemma exchanging glances. "If you're going to honk..." He ran a hand through his dark hair that obviously hadn't seen a comb in a while. "Not sick, just stupid." That the undisputed rake of Gryffindor House had just announced himself as stupid and hadn't attempted to flirt with either of them left them briefly wordless. It could mean only one thing. "He's sick," they declared, and quickly gathered their belongings. At best, whatever Sirius had could be contagious. At worst, they'd be stuck in close quarters with someone who looked ready to chuck his breakfast and maybe last night's dinner. They departed in such a hurry that they left the door open behind them. Sirius gratefully took advantage of the emptied train compartment to himself to tug the crotch of his trousers into a slightly less painful position. Just lifting his ass off the bench nearly brought tears to his eyes. I'm so bad at British versus American pronunciation, just a side note. Anyway, of all his brilliant ideas, this one really took the biscuit. "I'm done with Muggle birds, I swear it," Sirius exclaimed to himself. "Swear what, Padfoot?" James asked, sticking his head in before waving at someone down the corridor. "Peter, up here. Sirius saved a compartment for us." His gray eyes closed as he leaned backwards. Sirius moaned. Why couldn't Florence and Gemma have stayed? He might have been able to convince at least one to let him lay his head on their lap. The last people he wanted to see were James and Peter. No, I take that back. They don't have Moody's sense of smell. "Budge over, you prat," James playfully shouldered Sirius, pushing him down the bench. "Ugh," the grunt escaped before Sirius could stop it. He threw a forearm protectively around his lower midsection and drew his knees up. "What gives, Padfoot? Got sloshed after you left the pub last night, did you?" Peter inquired as he slid the door shut and then secured his trunk in the space above the bench. Sirius pulled himself upright and pressed his forehead against the cool glass of the window. "No, I wish I had. Wish I could right now." A look passed between James and Peter. "So what were you swearing off then, mate? Besides singing while drunk?" If he told them, Sirius would never live it down. It went beyond dragging Wormtail and Mooney on stage last night to back up his questionable vocals. Knowing his friends as he did, though, they probably wouldn't stop pestering him until he admitted it. You don't want to know, he answered, just as the compartment door slid open. What do we not want to know? Remus asked. And Sirius, you left your trunk on the platform. You're lucky I recognized it. A flick of Remus's wand sent the floating trunk upwards where it slid in neatly next to the others. The whistle blew the moment it settled into place. James, remember we need to head to the prefix compartment before Lily comes looking for us. A belabored groan was grudgingly drawn from Sirius as the train jerked into motion and his head smacked the window. Any minute now, he's going to notice. We'll leave in a moment. Padfoot here was swearing something off when we found him, James answered. Peter chimed in. It's not getting rat-assed or singing muggle songs about Potter's girl off-key. Remus ignored Peter, as tempting as it was to do otherwise. His sensitive nose twitched. What's that smell? Not me, I bathed. Which of you prats blew off? Peter was once more ignored as Remus took the seat across from Sirius. Coppery, he murmured with his eyes closed. Like a burnt twopence. Remus opened his brown eyes and stared at Sirius intently. Are you bleeding, Padfoot? The jig was up. There would be no hiding it now. I was. I hope I'm not any more. Can we just leave it at that? He pleaded uncharacteristically. No, all three of his steadfast friends answered a bit too heartily for Sirius's liking. What happened after you left the pub with that muggle woman? The blonde one. What was her name? James inquired. Jacqueline, I believe, answered Remus. His concerned brown eyes never left Sirius's pale face. You're sweating up a storm there, mate. You would be too, Moony, trust me. In over your head again? Was she a bit too much to handle? James asked. Best just to admit it straight out. Enough. Sirius held up his hands in surrender. Jackie took me to her flat. It started out nice enough. I remembered your advice, Prongs. No magic, at least not with the wand I got from Ollivanders. That drew a snicker from Peter. Then she took off her shirt and, well, I knew she had baps like a pair of ripe melons before we left. Sirius cupped his hands chest high to emphasize his point. She did have a cracking pair of throat-knee bits, yeah? I hope I pronounced that right. Right as ever, Wormtail. But what I didn't expect was the ring. Three confused faces stared at Sirius. James finally hazarded a guess. She was married and her husband walked in? Despite the pain, Sirius had to grin. No, she had this little silver ring, like an earring, but going through her nipple. Called it a piercing. And attached to it was this red and green Christmas tassel that started bouncing and twirling when I had her on top. Sirius's fingers scribed a lively circle in the air at the approximate height above his lap. Dog's bollocks, you git, Peter cried out. I cannot pronounce this word, sorry guys. Not even a word would put a ring through her bit. James shook his head. He's just taking the piss out of us, Remus. Remus simply held up a hand to forestall further comments. How exactly does this have anything to do with the scent of blood? Hold on to your fur, Moony, I'm getting to that part. Sirius shifted on the bench, trying to find a more comfortable position. It was nearly impossible between the throbbing pain and what he was about to confess. Afterwards, we got to talking about her piercing and had a few more drinks. One thing led to another, and next thing I know, Jackie convinced me to get one. Silence hung in the compartment, thick enough to cut. The only sound was the soft rhythmic clack-clack underfoot of the train racing over the tracks. You're telling us you got this piercing thing done? Through a nipple? James asked slowly. Sirius closed his eyes and shook his head. No, mate. Not my nipple. A little lower than that. Taking a deep breath against both the anticipated pain and humiliation, he undid his trousers and leveraged himself off the seat, just enough to slip the waistband of his pants halfway down. She said it would liven things up next time. It's called a Prince Albert. Peter squeaked faintly and covered his mouth as he scrabbled backwards. His throat worked convulsively as he fought to keep his gorge down. Merlin's hairy ass! James's knee jerked upwards reflectively as he leaned away. How? What? Is that a bit of ribbon hanging off it? Sirius peered down for a moment and nudged it, causing his friends to flinch. I think it's a leftover Christmas bow. The only one who didn't move as far away as possible was Remus, who was wearing an expression torn between repulsion and fascination. Sirius, is it supposed to be swollen like that, mate? And that is where it ends. There's a quick author's note which says, many thanks to my lovely beta, Alexis Black, for putting up with my peculiar brand of insanity. Also, thanks to Mrs. Harry Potter for helping this bloody yank with when it came to Brit picking. I have only my demented muse, Jack Black's take on Frodo at the Council of Elrond, and Marshall to blame for this one shot. Mostly Marshall, though. And the story title is from Single Ladies by Beyonce. Okay. Well, that is the story. I have to admit to getting a good laugh out of it when I first read it. Hold on, it looks like Kevin is here. Let me just message him real quick. Oops. I'm going to add him as soon as I can so he can discuss with us. And then, as I said, I have the questions that I've collected from Alexis that I will read. We got some questions over the past week, and she has answered them for us, so I will read those as soon as we get Kevin in here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read just one of them. I'll read the first question while we're waiting for Kevin to jump in, which is, what gave you the idea for this hilarious story? And her answer, she has a short answer and a long answer. So short answer, a random conversation with Scooterbug8515 and Jack Black's take on the Council of Elrond. Long answer, Scooter, who I blame for this tale, was telling me how the rules of HBFF Archive had actually been more strict in the past. That is true. One of the examples was previously you could not use the word nipple in a story. I got a backstory about this, but we'll hear her answer first. This made no sense to my Slitherclaw mind because that part of the body is not specifically genitalia. Okay, so it could be construed as part of an erogenous zone, but it could also be something totally innocent. Like, what if the tale was about a young Molly Weasley who had just had her first child and was having difficulty getting him to latch on properly for breastfeeding? Or what if it was a simple mentioning of a nipple piercing? Do wizards/witches even do piercings, or is that a muggle-only type of thing? It's a good question. Could I even get a story featuring a nipple piercing past the validators? Yes, you can. Being a past validator, nipple's okay. What about a piercing somewhere else, somewhere lower? That series of questions zipped through my mind like lightning and led me back to Jack Black and the hilarious parody of the Council of Elrond. If you've never seen it and you like/love The Lord of the Rings, do yourself a favor and Google it. I nearly cried the first time I watched it. I'm assuming in laughter. I haven't seen it, so I guess I have to see it. In any case, the instant my brain went Jack Black, all I could think of was Sirius Black getting a Prince Albert and the challenge of whether I could get the tail past the validators. That reminds me of that one challenge that was on HBFF about like the smut challenge or something, where everyone was trying to make sure that it didn't cross the line so that the validators wouldn't reject it. Fun times. Do we have Kevin yet? Not yet. Okay, let us keep reading. Some questions. Here we've got another one. And as I said earlier, feel free to add your questions to the Hangout. After every Fic Night, we add a thread. It's getting kind of dark. I hope you can still see me. There, that's a little bit better. We add a thread to HPFT where you can continue the conversation from our Fic Night on the forums. So if you have any questions that aren't these questions, they haven't been answered yet, feel free to ask them there and I can put them over on that thread as well. Let's keep going though. So number 2, do you think this could have happened to any of the other Marauders or just Sirius? And Alexis says, I think if Peter had been alone with Sirius, just 2 boys on the town, there's a chance Sirius might have persuaded Wormtail into it. James or Remus, I doubt it. What do you guys think? I think that's a really good question. As I was reading the question and her answer, I was thinking maybe James would do it. I don't know. I'm not a huge reader of Marauders era fan fiction, and I haven't really written much either. So I don't think I have a really great handle on James and who he is as a character, but he strikes me as someone who occasionally gets himself into some sticky situations. But I do think of the 4, Sirius is probably the craziest or the most rebellious. I think probably because of his family and wanting to rebel a little bit from the tight hold they have on him. I can see what she means by her answer, though, that maybe Wormtail would have been persuaded into it because I feel like he definitely wanted to, be part of the group and to fit in with them. Okay. I'm adding Kevin. Okay. He's been invited. Let's see if he pops up soon. Let me read one more question while we're waiting for him, and then he can join us and discuss. Okay. 3, will Sirius learn from this experience? These are great questions. She says, I believe that greatly depends on whether the swelling goes down and it heals properly. That's so funny, being that that is the final sentence of this story. Sirius, is it supposed to be swollen like that, mate? That's pretty funny. So we'll see if he learns from this experience. I think eventually he'll learn. Okay. Number 4, will there be more of this story? She says, unfortunately, no. Once I hit that last line from Remus, which we were just talking about, my muse said full stop. I could possibly come up with more, but it would inevitably wander deep into mature territory, perhaps NC-17. That is a good point. That's a very good point. I think personally the way that it was written, and as I read it, I was impressed by how it stayed relatively, I don't know what word to use, like digestible? Is that I don't know if that's the right word. But for someone like me, who I don't get offended super easily, but I do, probably more than the average person, I didn't find myself to be offended by it or think that it was overly mature. So I think it's at a good spot right now, and I can see what she means, what Alexis means by, it could get a little bit, could go off the deep end a little bit if this were to be continued. Although one of the other questions that she was asked and she answered, she does kind of continue the story a little bit in that answer. So stay tuned for that, because it's a really good answer. And I would love to see it turn into a fanfic, because I don't think it would be too mature, this answer. So you'll have to see what I mean in a bit. Sorry guys, I keep checking for Kevin. He says, gave me his email, I invited him. Hopefully he can join us so we can have a discussion. What I wanted to discuss with him, and with you guys too, you can discuss in the chat box and obviously on the thread that we'll create after this is ended. But I loved what I would consider dark humor of this piece, because I know for me at least, I get pulled into writing this like really angsty fan fiction like all the time, and I loved reading this because it was such like it wasn't super like light and fluffy obviously, but it was still a break from the like very serious fanfic that I read and write a lot, and it's so funny. And so I actually the question that I'll read about the last question I'll read is from me, that I asked her about the dark humor, and Alexis will give us some advice on how to write it, because I know I fail at writing any kind of humor. I'm so bad at it. Okay, we will get to that question in a bit though. We are on question 5. What made you think of the Marauders for this particular story? And Alexis says, I was kind of surprised to find my muse demanding I write a Marauder's tale of this idea. I don't often venture into that era. Hogwarts era is my wheelhouse. It just made sense though. Something about those 4 boys makes me think of Misadventure. That's such a good way to put it. Okay, it is getting really dark. I think maybe I should move in, because it's okay. Y'all can see me, right? I can see me in the video, so it is a little bit dark, and I apologize, but I think we'll keep going. Kevin says he did not get the invite. Try that one more time. Let's see. Send invite to Kevin. Invite. Okay, we're trying to get Kevin in here. He says he didn't get the invite. Okay, so Kevin, still feel free to jump in with discussions. I see we got a couple people chatting in the chat box. Guys, feel free to jump in, add your questions, add anything that you want to discuss. I will read it and I will add you to our discussion as I go through these questions. Sorry that it's a bit jumpy. I have the computer on my lap since I'm outside. Okay, Let's get through these questions before it gets totally dark out here. 6, what advice do you have for other authors who want to try, oh, this was my question, who want to try dark humor but are failing at it? This is a really good answer. She's got some good advice. She says, first, oh geez, that's a hard question. You have to understand that I've been told for years that I have no sense of humor. I do, it's just that it's an odd sense of humor. I think you have to embrace the dark side of humor fully, the wrongness of it. Don't just flirt with it, aka nipple piercing, go all the way, aka Prince Albert. And don't get too wrapped up about what readers might think, just go with it. Finally, if anyone tells you that you don't have a sense of humor, ignore them. That is very reassuring, because I feel like I do not have a sense of humor whatsoever. And I just think, and maybe some of you watching can relate to me, and I'm sure Alexis can relate, that maybe my sense of humor isn't the traditional sense of humor, and we should all feel emboldened after reading this to try out some new humor. I'd love to see, especially with our new archives opening up soon. Woo! I'm so excited with HBFT's new archive opening up. I'd love to see us all try our hand out at some dark humor and see if we can help each other out and try some new things with our writing. I definitely feel inspired to do so, especially because I haven't written in such a long time. It's been a long time since I've written some fan fiction, and with fall break coming up, you better believe I'll be writing some more, and I'm super excited to try this out. Okay. Next question. Who is your favorite Marauder? She says Remus, without a doubt. Tell us more. That's all I have for her answer. Hopefully she can tell us more about this and more about her reasoning. I'm a fan of Remus, but I think Sirius is probably my favorite. He's funny. After reading this fic, I am seeing a new side to him in this fic, which is also funny. Okay, last question. Is Sirius going to have to visit Madame Pomfrey? Okay, this is a funny question, and this is the question that I was alluding to, where she kind of does continue the story, or at least give us a taste of what's going to happen next. So Alexis says yes, because he was too embarrassed to ask Lily to whip up a salve at first. Remember, she was good at potions. Then, by the time he did, she was appalled, refused, berated the other 3 boys, and had them drag Sirius's sorry butt up to the hospital wing. I imagine Dumbledore eventually heard about it and paid Sirius a visit. Maybe showed off that scar of his that looked like a map of the London Underground. Okay. Oh, it's so dark. I'm sorry, guys. Is that better? That's better. I'm in the light now. I love this, and I totally want to see this, especially because Dumbledore is another person that I feel like has a weird sense of humor, so he would fit perfectly into a sequel of this if you ever decide to, Alexis. I think this would be really funny, and it wouldn't be too mature. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments if you're listening. Oh, we have a comment from Karen. She says, I could see James doing that if he lost a bet. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I totally can see James doing this as well. He's, to me at least, he strikes me as the kind of person, yeah, I like that idea of if he lost a bet, because he's definitely prideful, and he would follow through if he lost the bet, and he would definitely do whatever, punishment they decided for him. Kevin is saying, still no dice on the invite. Oh, my computer. I'm just glad that I got this to film. I don't know if you guys were watching Fic Night number 2 way back when, a couple months ago when I was with Lizzie. She was here visiting me. I tried for like an hour on my computer to even get it to film, and it wouldn't film. So I'm glad that we're at least filming now. But sorry, Kevin. Okay, guys, if you have any other comments, please feel free. I can see the chat. Please feel free to add. I had a lot of fun talking about this story. It's different than the stories we've used for Fic Night in the past. It was a lot of fun to read and to discuss. I'm going to break out of my comfort zone a little bit and have fun with it. Thank you again, Alexis, for answering those questions in advance. Once again, we will be posting a thread on HBFT. Again, that the full link is in the description below. But we are a Harry Potter and other fandom website where we discuss fan fiction, we discuss our favorite fandoms, and we will have an archive opening very soon for you to publish your own fan fiction works in any fandom. The full link is hpfanfictalk.com. So we will have a thread up there where you can continue the conversation from tonight, and Alexis can jump in and answer any questions that you may have. She's been gracious enough to answer the questions thus far. So thank you for those of you who are here and who participated in the chat. Sorry, Kevin, that we couldn't get you on here. I do apologize. One of these days we'll make it work. But thanks again for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. It's getting pretty dark, so I'm going to log off now. And I will see you in the next Fic Night, which should be in just a couple of weeks. Oh, by the way, we will be posting a new call for stories. We've run through all of the top stories that were voted for Fic Night from this past round. So we will be posting up a new call for stories very soon. So please feel free to put your own story up as a possibility for a future Fic Night if you are willing to give us permission to read it, discuss it, ask you questions about it. It's been a lot of fun. So please feel free to put your story up, and we'll do a voting soon for the next round of Fic Nights. We usually grab about 3 stories from each before we do a new round. So look out for that. Look out for the thread where you can continue asking Alexis questions. And we will see you for the next Fic Night. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good one.